Hello and welcome back to the Timeline Astrology podcast with myself, Gary O'Toole, and my guest today is Kishori. Kishori has been with me before as we've talked about the Song of Rahu, her epic poem, and we've been doing this Maps of Consciousness series, talking about Rahu in each of the houses of astrology. And in this episode, we talk about Rahu in the 10th house, the most prominent house, in fact, and really a great place to put Rahu, a great place to put all of our ambitions, in other words, all of our drive and ambition into our career, for example. But the 10th house is any action that we take, it's the house of karma. So Kishori talks about how we can approach Rahu in this guise, in this way, and how we can use the illuminating Dark Lord, as she puts it, to really open ourselves up to doing things more on purpose, finding our dharma in whatever we do. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and without further ado, here's Kishori. So welcome back, Kishori. Great to have you here.
Yes, delightful as always to spend some time hanging out with you and talking about the unspeakable.
Talking about the unspeakable. Well, actually, interesting you say that, because when we talk about Rahu now moving into the 10th house, the most visible of the zodiac, of the horoscope, the pinnacle, in a way, what we would say is, the height that we'd achieve, whether in career or whatever it is. It's usually career, vocation, so it's our work and how visible we are, our status, our reputation. When we place Rahu there, which is said to be one of its best positions, because if there were ever a place to put all of our ambitions, would be into our career, right? And so it actually does well there. It's said to be a good position for it. But yeah, we can talk about all of that and how that could mix up in all kinds of different ways, and sometimes distorted ways. But as you always tell us, Kishori, eventually and ultimately this kind of freedom that we experience.
Yes, complete freedom. Freedom from any perception of the mind that there could be anything except magnificence and wonder and awesomeness and the unspeakable, if you like. And the idea that Rahu brings anything less than that is, well, unthinkable, really. Although we do think it, mind thinks it.
The mind thinks. I'm just thinking about what we had, just a brief discussion before we started recording, and what you were talking about, the shapeshifter Rahu. Yes. We could say that the 10th house, in a way, because it's the pinnacle, because it's the height of our achievements or whatever it is. It's like, I don't know if you know the symbolism of Capricorn, which is the natural 10th sign of the zodiac. It's like the mountain goat getting to the top of the mountain, the ambition and the kind of absolute, grit of getting there. In a way, it's also this sense of wanting to get there, and in a way, shaping that journey, and that journey shaping us as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. As you're talking about it, I'm thinking about Hanuman standing on the shores of Bharat and wondering how he's going to get to Lanka. And the little child tugs his robe and said, "Oh Lord, have you forgotten? You're immortal." "Oh yes," he says, "I forgot." And it's there, it's in an instant, without thought, without strategy, he's there. It isn't even a leap. The leap itself is collapsed in the knowing that he is already there. He is already everything.
Well, we can just leave it there then. That's great. Next time we'll talk about Rahu in the 11th.
I love it.
But that is it, like you said. So the problem is, let's again.
The mind is the problem. The mind not rooted in the heart field, let's say, that's what the problem is. The mind is not a problem. The mind is an amazing, magnificent tool to make visible the invisible, the unknown, to discover the secret treasure that we all are, hidden treasure. But mind, when it's not rooted in its origin, in its source, is a real pain. I mean, leads us down all sorts of little potholes.
Right. I mean, when you think about like anyone wishing to be somebody, you know, we think about that phrase even, be somebody.
Yes. Well, we already are, as Hanuman is already there. We already, but the thing is, there's that little apparent perceived gap between being and becoming in form.
Mm.
And that's our game, isn't it? That's our delight, that's our pleasure. We're always moving, love always expanding itself to be more, to be more, to be more. And as I was saying before we began recording, is that the I don't know. I think I have to stop. It's unspeakable. I can't say it.
I think it's interesting, the whole concept of becoming versus wanting to be somebody, believing that you're not enough or you're not it or whatever it is, and that kind of quest that we all go. I mean, when I do readings, it's probably, you know, up there with relationships. When people ask about, I mean, the two key things that people ask about in readings anyway are relationships and career. So it's like people are very focused on achieving something in the world, on leaving their mark and being somebody.
And the word, the key to beyond this state, prior to this state, is the allowing. I mean, it's the ugly ducklingness, if you like, or what is the desire of an acorn to become an oak tree, and where is desire in that? You know, desire has always got the idea, I haven't got, therefore I desire to get, which is strategic. Or there's that natural resting in, I am what I am already, and if I allow, the expression of consciousness will take me to allow that destiny to be fulfilled. And it's only the idea that I have not got, or I am not, that holds it back. So I don't know. So it's always that balance between sitting in a cave in the Himalaya meditating my life, or am I going to live my life and experience it? You know? Do I have to do anything? No. But yes, I must move. Action happens.
I think this is the key point about Rahu in the 10th more than anything, because I mean, you've just put your finger on it. The 10th house is the house of karma, of action. You know, so it's like we have to act. We are in the world. We've taken a body. We're acting all of the time, even when we choose not to act, as they say. But Rahu can, of course, distort and disrupt that and create these extremes that we keep seeing with Rahu, where it can be very contracted, and it's like, I need to achieve something and I'm not getting it. I'm not getting all I want. I'm not all I want, or whatever it is. I need to prove myself, for example. And where does that come from? You know, that separation of, again, wanting to be somebody as opposed to simply being. Which seems to be, when I, again, do readings for people, Rahu in the 10th can show this striving, this ambition that really drives the person to distraction.
And the way out is to let go, is just to allow. You know, what's coming to mind was that story of Rajneesh. He was a young, powerful young man, and he was swimming in the river one day, and he got caught in a whirlpool, and he was drawn down. And instead of fighting, he was so surrendered, he let go, hit the bottom of the river, and was thrown out immediately in one breath onto the opposite bank. It's that how do you allow? What does allowing mean? What does it actually mean? Does it mean sitting in a cave and doing nothing? Or does it mean allowing yourself to be danced by life?
I think people get confused between allowing and surrender.
Mm.
You know, if we talk about it in terms of yoga, like the practice of yoga, especially the physical
Mm.
components of yoga, where it's this sense of, you know, finding that balance between effort and effortlessness.
It has to be effortless, because if not, separative mind will always put the brakes on, because it can't do anything else. And yet there's this dance between this realizing the truth. When realization is there, there is absolutely nothing to do, but action happens, movement happens.
That seems to be a very sort of tantric approach, as opposed
Yes.
to maybe more the classical yogic approach of very much making lots of effort, that it requires so much effort initially.
Exactly. It's just, I've been playing myself with I've always been fascinated by martial arts. And I remember once having doing some exchanges with a really amazing guy he was. And he said something so strange. He said, we were walking down the stairs from the gallery where we'd been practicing. And I don't remember what he said, but I remember my answer. And I said, that's because you believe you're a man in the 20th century. I don't even know when it was, probably before the millennium. And when we got to the bottom of the stairs, we sat in my living room for 5 minutes. He says, I can't do this anymore. He said, I like my life the way it is. And he said, what you say, pulls the rug every single time. So, and then I guess it was the fear of losing the current identity to falling into the bigger identity. But it's a game. As that one consciousness, we came here into this story to experience being the littleness as well as the, yeah. But somehow there has to be a way of having both at the same time, of being both at the same time, not losing the awareness.
I'm just thinking of that image, you know, the image of Surya, the sun god, on the chariot,
Yes.
and being ridden, but the soul being, you know, the sun being the soul,
Yeah. Yes.
but then the charioteer in the front, that's, like you say, the little self. They're thinking that it's running the show, but it's actually it's all of it.
Exactly.
But we obviously get into our minds that we think we're in control of it. So it takes all of this massive effort to achieve whatever. And at the same time, I have this thought in my mind, and I don't know where it comes from, but this sense of when we achieve anything, it's like it really pats the ego on the back. And then we could easily hijack that in a way, even though we're not the ones, our small selves are not the ones making it happen. But we're maybe getting out of the way of the true self, the higher self, which has already set it in motion.
We still have to have some kind of shape, some kind of form here, some kind of individualized consciousness. We have to have some shape. And I was going back to the Shaolin martial art thing I've been looking at lately, and listening to this particular teacher, guru, whatever, speaking, and looking at all the effort that you have to make with the discipline. And I can't say that I have ever been extremely disciplined. I've been discipled to the heart. I've been doing what I love to do, but it can look, and to me as well, also in my little judging mind, says, oh, you're very scattered. You're very, you know, you don't follow a routine. You don't. And so that's my personal dilemma, if you like, wanting to create. We were talking about going to bed on time and creating a going to sleep routine. And I probably would go to sleep better if I kept to my stated intention. But something, and it has to be the Rahu energy, pulls the rug and does not allow me, or I do not allow me to possess my own discipline, or God knows, I'm still playing with it. So
Well, for me, that seems to be because I can give you my experience of being
Yeah.
in nearly 18 years of this cycle of Rahu. Initially, I had such an energy, like the Shakti, like of Rahu, to discipline myself. Like I was so disciplined. Like I would be getting up
Mm.
every morning at 6 o'clock and doing 2 hours of yoga every morning and then getting on with my day and so on and so on. But that eventually slipped away. Like you say, Rahu pulled the rug. And
Mm.
then I had to then realize that actually Rahu's path is not the classic yogic path in a way. Although you could take that path, it's more like you say, you have to, well, I don't know if you say, but maybe you can clarify your thoughts on this. But basically, for me, it's the experience of like the tantric approach, that there isn't actually anything that I actually have to do. I just need to rest in beingness. And then from that place, I can then do.
Absolutely. That's what I feel I know, but my mind also wants to get some kind of order because I feel a little bit of judgment that says it'd be better. And I use the word keala a lot. And remember, I think that word, which I fell in love with when I realized I heard Ananda Ma spoken in context of Ananda Ma, the Bengali word, spontaneous, whim, fancy. But you can only be really spontaneous if you haven't got the filters on, if you haven't got your, because otherwise, and also you have to use a bit of that common sense, because otherwise it would be like, oh, I'd like to fly. Oh, well, I'll just go and stand on the roof and fly. But there's this, the frequency of flying is not yet, I've not yet downloaded that, I have to confess. And my common sense or my attachment to being in this particular body and shape-shifting it into, I don't know, I just don't think I'm born yet, you see, Gary. I just don't feel that we are born. And I often say that, feel that. There's that beautiful prayer by poem, Louis McNeice, I'm prayer before birth, beautiful. And it's like, we come and we completely erase, except for that little tiny echo. There is nothing to do except follow your joy, follow your bliss, as Campbell said, follow your bliss. But while there's that duty feeling, you know, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, it would be better if, then it, I guess it's my last little bit of struggle, you know, not struggle, but the game of playing with allowing. I mean, look at a child does. A child doesn't have a list of a 3-year-old playing in the sandpit. Duty or delight? What is it? Are we here to be discipled to the heart, or are we here to be disciplined, to create structure? I don't know. I always thought of my structure should be like skin, that it stretches and it's flexible. And I'm talking about something that I can't even speak about really yet.
Right. It's like that's not downloaded yet, like flying.
Not fully, exactly. Though I know there are people, and my being always used to, when I used to have that communicating energy, would say, it's like which do you choose? Do you do this out of love, pure, spontaneous, childlike delight? Or are you doing it because you've created a structure? And yet tram lines, railway lines are very useful at times, because the mind is still not fully rooted. I guess if we rooted that, then the mind fully into being discipled to the heart, maybe we wouldn't need it. Maybe we just...
It makes me think of, you know, when someone who is not accustomed to being in like an environment like a meditation hall or something, or, you know, it's not something they would ever do. And so they have no preconceived notions about what that means or what would come out of that. I've seen this before where somebody will come into that environment and just simply have this kind of amazing earth-shattering experience because they had no expectations. Whereas the person coming in with years and years of practice and effort and all of that, just having a horrible time sitting on a mat, or sitting on a stool,
It's like Hesse's Nazis and Goldmund. Did you read that one ever?
No, what is that?
Well, it's a really beautiful novel. Hermann Hesse, Nazis and Goldmund, and briefly, it's two people, two monks in a monastery, or brothers, and one goes out and Goldmund, he lives the world, and the other one stays put and becomes probably a prior or an abbot or something. I'm condensing it very badly. It's a long time since I read it, but they're two opposites. Do you go dancing through the world, loving what you see, enjoying everything, responding, or do you discipline yourself and become, tight and structured?
This seems to be like we don't often say the word Ketu here, but Ketu obviously being the other side of Rahu, that seems to be the sort of the extreme of both monks in that case, in your story, right?
Yes.
It's like, are we completely lost in the world, or are we detached completely? And what does the middle look like? What does a balanced way? Obviously, we know from your practice, it's hand on heart.
Exactly.
Right.
This is the middle way. And as Rahu says, sit rather in the middle of the house. Love and understand the mystery of my dark secret ways. And Rahu, that poem, oh gosh, I have to get it published.
Yes, please.
I will. But it's like that, and the way of Rahu is not easy for the mind that is not surrendered into the heart. And the only way to get through the intensity of the intense Rahu periods, when you are really under the rule of Rahu, is to let go into the heart. We cannot be whiter than white. We cannot. That idea that I should be here and do no harm. Well, I go out and I breathe and I breathe bacteria, and do they die, or do they become me? When I am everything, what harm? The idea of eating meat, not eating meat. If you walk on the grass, you kill 1,000 little creatures.
That really has struck home that what you just said there, because of course, when realizing we're all of it, and of course Rahu is the break off part where we don't realize we're all of it. It's that part we don't realize we are, right?
And he's stealing the nectar of immortality. To the Asura becomes a god, and the whole idea of the union of opposites, this game of the uniting of the opposite, nothing is what it seems to be. It's the constant play of how can the absolute become the littlest, nothingest? How can it become nothing? How can it become nothing? It is nothing to begin with, and it all comes out of the nothing, like Purna, Medam, etc. How? And yet it wants to. If you could say that about the absolute, it wants anything. Its desire, its love moves to become everything, even its opposite. And this is what the whole of the Song of Rahu points to. I am famine, rape, and the scavenging dogs of war, and still I am the divine beloved. Still I am that I am. I am all of this. And we're here to realize that and still play in the sandpit, still explore. My sense is that we haven't begun yet. We're getting to the point of the realization, what will I do with this story world as I realize ever more this union of opposites, this nothing and everything? What is humanity? What can it be? What is it moving to become? That's what excites me.
This is very this is so important to hear, because of course when we realize that we're all of it and that we can still play in the sandpit, like you say,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And whatever we do, then we do, but we realize that actually we don't have to. We're all of it. We're all of it. We don't have to, but we still choose to.
So you can't put a child in a sandpit and say, play. No, play. That's your command. You are supposed to play. We're here. We're the dance, and cut me down and I leap up high. I am the life that will never, never die. So all of the chaos that's happening in the world, that's coming out of the woodwork, you think, oh yeah, the ship's sinking. It's not. Nothing can ever sink it. And the way through what we are experiencing globally, individually, is simply to fall ever more into the heart, the game, and the magic of slipping through the cracks. You're in a tight corner, think, oh, I'm going bankrupt. Oh, my, whatever it is, the loss of everything. There is no loss. There cannot be a loss. Anything that's ever been dreamt or imagined cannot disappear. It does not. So death cannot be a reality. It's an experience. I'm interested to see what I have seen in my inner vision. I'm interested to see what it's like when we have full knowledge of being the absolute and the little shape-shifting thingy, whatever we are, at the same time. I mean, the mind in separation is blown at the thought.
Do you think that someone who has that realization would also drop this idea or this desire, this ambition to, again, be somebody, to achieve something great in the world, to leave their mark?
My sense is that the destiny, let's call it the Dharma, of every single being is already written. The answer is the fullness, the plain. We are already that. And so the thing that keeps the brakes on, the fear, if you like, the even the great fear that people attribute to Rahu, it isn't a reality. And when there is no fear, when we have the brakes off and we allow the brakes to be off, what could we become? What is humanity ultimately? Because it already is. There's no time. I mean, prior to space-time, prior to this bubble, what are we? And when those what should we call it, the skin or the shape, the barrier, the threshold, if you like, between, let's say, embodied life and disembodied life, it doesn't exist outside time. It's a continuum. To be able to play in the playground and go back to resting in the heart. But it's not even go back. It's a continuum already. We are always already what we are. As those little thin film. Once my being said, it's a thin film on the surface of this vast, pulsating, living emptiness. It's one of my earlier poems. And I go back to my own poetry that's written from that state of knowing, because it became like my Bible. I would go, oh, I see. It's a thin, it's almost not there. It's like the skin of the membrane on the surface of water. It's not really there. You just touch it and there is no membrane, and yet there appears to be something which holds that water coherent. And it's like, we are like that water poured out. Mind in separation doesn't know. And it's not that it's wrong. It was great. It's wonderful to experience the littleness. And they have to be these what shall we call them, membranes, these thresholds.
But I love that image you used about the film on top of the water, but when you go to touch it, like it's not there, but then yet something is holding that together in that shape.
Yes,
form.
yes.
And yet it's flowing, it's moving. It's like, again, like Rahu, the shapeshifter.
Yes. I'm curious. So I'm curious about, you can't dissolve all shape because otherwise we wouldn't be playing in the sandpit. We wouldn't be here if there weren't some kind of shape. But the things where mind comes up against a closed door, for example, like Alice in Wonderland, you know, we have the door closed. What is fun is to be able to shrink myself to fit in the door, or to by my thought to make the door bigger, so that I want to play with, I am playing with what we can call magical thought, or it's not magical thought, it's just the more I know my own identity, the more the whole, which is me, responds to me. And we were talking about at the beginning, there's the chaos that seems to be in the world, the disruption, the fragmentation. I can slip through the cracks. And that was what I was told 40 years ago. Your destiny is to slip through the cracks in the manifest world. Of course, I didn't really understand it fully 40 years ago. What can that be? But a blade of grass finds its way through a weak spot in the concrete or the cement that's been laid over it. And there's always there's always a way through. Because I am creating in some way, mostly still unconsciously, but a lot of it more and more consciously. I'm interested to see the tipping point of humanity waking to what it really is, and seeing how we resolve questions like cutting down the rainforests and global warming. And I mean, it's all made up. I would hesitate to say it to some people because they would go, oh, it's obviously not made up, it's really happening. But how do we make ourselves believe that the dream we are having is really happening? You know, because you have to play it as if it's real, but know that it's not. And all fear is gone. I mean, you have people playing with lucid dreaming and doing things in the lucid dream that prove that whatever it is they want to prove, it's all made up. And the more we play with that, the more we experiment with this, how far can I push the reality? You know, can I really fly? But while one person has actually levitated, and we know that to be true, but they were not levitating by the power of their mind, but by consciousness itself lifting. It's this incredible fun, delight of untangling from the cat's cradle.
One thought that I have about all of this is, you know, if we're all of it and we have that realization, and yet Mr. Frosty Breath comes in and says, no, you're not. You're this, and actually you're not even this. You're a piece of, you know, whatever. It's like, oh, you can't do that. You know, you're never going to achieve anything. You know, whatever it is, that voice, Mr. Frosty Breath. How do we navigate all of that?
Okay, so when it's feeling, when Mr. Frosty Breath or a diagnosis from an apparent external authority comes in, you have to go to your heart and go, is this what I would consciously, is this what my fairy godmother, my Jupiter on the ascendant would choose? Is this what I would gift myself with? Do I absolutely love this? And keep expanding your the field of what you're playing with by daring to dream big, by daring to just daring. You know, I mean, I'm playing little games now with people about teleporting. Now we know that appearing in two places at once is possible. I know because people have seen that happening with me, and I am going to go into that story, but I haven't willfully from my conscious mind played with that yet. But I'm playing a little bit just within the same house, you know, so you don't scare yourself.
Right. Well, you know what? I got a headset recently, right? My partner actually got a headset, you know, those VR headsets, and we were playing with it.
Yeah.
And when you put it on and it's like you go to this room, this virtual room, and there are other people hanging out there, and you can literally walk up and say hello to someone and have a conversation. And I'm like sitting in my room at home, and I don't know where they are in the world. And I'm like, it's just mind-boggling in a way.
Oh, I don't know about this. What is it?
It's basically like, it's, you know, the latest technology, and, you know, and actually it's probably not the latest technology. It's the latest technology available to us. Who knows where that's going to go in the very near future. But you basically put on this headset, you disappear into this, sorry, not disappear, but you go into this virtual world, you go into these different rooms. You're literally, by putting on this headset, in the space. Like, you just look around and you're like in that space, wherever it is you choose. You go to different rooms.
Yes.
And other people around the world are going into the same room, and they have avatars. Everyone is an avatar, and you can literally walk up to them and say hello and have a conversation to this person who knows where they are in the world.
Yes. Well, we can do that when in our imagination, we can do it as well. How amazing. I didn't know that existed. I must have a little explore.
Well, actually, speaking of, you know, because I know you use Facebook, and Facebook have, you know, you might have seen recently launched this metaverse. So now they're no longer Facebook. Well, Facebook comes under the umbrella of Meta, it's called.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but the metaverse is this, basically you put on this headset and you go into whatever room. There are all these rooms. Eventually you'll be able to go like shopping. You'll be able to go to a concert, do all of these different things in the virtual world.
It's a bit, well, it reminds me of when I first heard of something called Second Life. Not that I played with it, but I had a little explore, and people completely move into living in this second life. And they could earn money and talk to people. They have little avatars to play with. And I went, oh yeah, that's how it is. It's worlds within worlds within worlds.
It's amazing though, when you do put on the headset and you're in that world, how real it is. And even though for me, I almost feel like I need to just keep checking in with my body as I'm sitting there, because I am in this different space in a way.
And you know, but the guidance is, or the let's call it the gyroscope thing is, do you love it? Is it fun? Does it evoke your curiosity, your pleasure, your joy? Or is it, does it create tightness in, you know what I mean? Does it bring up fear? Does it bring that loss that I spoke to about that martial artist that I was doing exchanges with many years ago? He said, no, I want to keep my identity that I've got. I don't want to lose. I really like being a martial artist at this time, and I don't want to be anything else. But if you look at all the lives that people are living, all the different lives, the ones that are real, that are really loved and really consumed, they do become real. But it's only that feeling, the love, the enjoyment, the love feeling, that makes it, you can't just imagine without that's what makes it real. And my feeling is that consciousness is here to make life in this form, in some way, this form, to make it real. Because a lot of it isn't real. People, I mean, you look at people walking around the streets, and many of them are just robotic.
Right.
No, nothing there. They're not alive.
That's the one thing that I can say for sure, that this Rahu period of my life has never, ever brought, is a sense of being robotic. And it's always been interesting. It's always been fascinating. It's been fun mostly. It's been sometimes really challenging, but even that I see as a kind of fuel for the later on opening and the creativity. Because
Yes, yes.
when I'm writing, when I'm creating or doing anything, I get a sense what you're saying. I really feel the need to get into that kind of childlike sort of really playful state to create
On
something.
the razor's edge, dancing on the razor's edge. That he says it's what I am doing.
Mm.
That's, and I recognize that in you at the beginning when we first met. That that challenging yourself somehow to, you know. I used to think, how did I get down this pothole whenever I got into a corner, a tight little space? But there's always a way through, but it's never through thinking it out. Mind is not meant for thinking. Mind only is useful when, really useful, when it's rooted in the heart. When, and even if it's something, I don't know, solving puzzles, it's for the joy of it. If it's not for the joy of it, for the pleasure, then it tightens up the whole system.
But you know, when you're driving down that road that you don't know, and you kind of gone down to this slip road, and then just really don't know, and you maybe by the coast, you're like, oh, this could like go off the edge at any minute, or you know, that kind of feeling of uncertainty and nervousness around, and you get contracted around, this is uncertain and I don't know where I'm going. That also, it feels to me what Rahu's all about, and that I've tried to channel that into, you know, because it's like if you're on the leading edge, like you said, if you're on the cutting edge, well, like not a lot of people are there with you. You're looking around, well, actually, no one is really hearing what I'm saying.
There, and there really is nobody there.
Well, there's nobody there, right? So that's the scary thing about it. And then at the same time, you still have to go there and enjoy it.
Yes, yes.
But it's scary.
Yes, yes, it is scary. And it stretches you, it widens you and widens you to God knows where, and God does know where, or whatever God might be. It's, I remember the feeling I had one day, and of course I was Catholic and very devoted to Jesus in my early years. And I remember once being I was getting divorced, and it was a big breakdown of relationship. And I'm sitting there in the church looking at a statue of the Sacred Heart and praying or whatever. And it's all of a sudden, the heart hole opens up and said, go, this is not your place anymore. This archetype is dead for you, go. And I went right through out into the world. Once later on, I met a born-again Christian person who was helping me paint the house after my mother died. And she said, Jesus is saying you've got to go back to him. I said, back to him? I don't think I ever left anything. I just went through it, everything that seemed to be a solid, separate. I went through it. And only by experiencing this repeated dissolution of doors and skins on water and things, and allowing, it is scary. If the ground beneath your feet becomes no longer solid, wow. But by repeatedly experiencing it, there is a sense of, oh yeah, this is the way it's meant to be. This is it. And eventually I discovered that whatever I thought of was of Christ was a frequency. And it was something, a state that I could choose. And so I never left anything. It's always become part of what I am.
But you know, when you're out on that leading edge, on the cutting edge, and you are there like being the trailblazer, as you know, many people are, when you think, well, everybody is at some point in their life, right? But when you really think about those kinds of trailblazers who have carved a path out for others, who have been a good example of what it's like you are for me, right? So you've had that experience, and your perspective on Rahu has opened my eyes like no one, right?
But you already knew it, you see?
Yes, but but at the same time, and you did too at the time, and you know, and then those before you. But what I'm saying is that when you are on that leading edge, like Is that what it is? Is that, you know, you having to, in some sense, even though on some level you know it, on some other level you don't. You're uncertain. You're scared as hell, and you're like, is this? Am I actually where I need to be? Is this right?
And then yeah, of course, it's always right. You see, you're the one that's dreaming the script, the trailblazer, if you like. You already are everything. It's like Eliot, you know, returning to the place where you've started and knowing it for the first time. You didn't know it before you discovered it. You were it, but you didn't know it that you were it. It's like that the Sufi words, I was a hidden treasure and I wish to be known. I wish to know myself. And each one of us is that one, some individualized expression, a whole universe, each one of us. We already are it, we already are. But we're going through the experience here of not knowing in order to know it. Just a simple game of hide and seek. And it's very easy to say.
But when, for example, so I get everything you're saying, but I'm thinking now of when you or I or anyone is doing anything that's on the cutting edge, right? And like our conversations over the last while of Rahu have, I think, been cutting edge. You know, even if I just frame it in terms of astrological conversation, you know, this is not the usual kind of conversation about Rahu, right? So there is a tendency when you're doing anything, let's face it, that's not the norm. That's, you know, maybe you're ahead of your time in some way, to rub up other people the wrong way. Like I remember asking Pearl Finn years ago in an astrology class about Rahu. I asked her straight out, is it possible to do Rahu, quote unquote, do Rahu without stepping on people's toes? And she said in a heartbeat, no, it's not possible. So what about that then? When you meet with others who kind of you rub up the wrong way because you're trying something new, you're out there doing something different, and it's not the tradition, it's not the norm. It's like, what is that? You know, it's like the new tech, right? It like even me putting on that headset, the VR headset, it's a bit scary, it's a bit new, it's a bit unusual, right? How do we stay in that state of knowing, even though other people are reflecting back to us this sense of, wait a minute, really? Is it really?
You are local intelligence, and you also are non-local intelligence. You are the individualization of the absolute of everything in one little point, in order to have this experience, in order to expand love. And to do that, you have to consciousness veils, if you like, temporarily the vaster self, the magnificence of the vaster self. But it's, if you know, and you go through lots of experiences like this, you know that everything has to go. Ultimately, all ideas about what everything is, they have to, because for you to recognize and become the creator divine in form that you are, for you to become that, you already are it, but to become it, I can't imagine what that would be like. I mean, I am imagining it, but I'm always on that edge of, oh, what more? What more? And it's that excitement, that shape-shifting. I remember reading Carlos Castaneda when I was about 18, and my father was a publisher, and I used to get proof copies. And I remember he gave me a copy once, or was it Don Juan, or one of the early Castaneda books. And I remember thinking, oh, this is not real. It took years for me to see, well, yes, someone is describing experiences that they have had. It was a real experience, and is possible. It's all of the things that we hear tell of in Star Trek, or in other science fiction, or stories of great masters in India raising from the dead. It's all possible. It's all possible to anybody, because one aspect of myself has played with that. And every day it's something more expands. The very fact that we are having this kind of conversation that is almost impossible. And we're not sitting in caves in the Himalaya, and we're not sitting on great golden thrones in India. We are here. We are cutting edge, ordinary.
This is amazing. This makes me think about this notion of cutting ourselves off from that we pinch it off, and that the more we pinch it off, it seems the more fear builds up. Because if you imagine like new tech, for example, and you are completely adverse to using tech at all, but all of a sudden you fast forward 10, 20 years and everybody's wearing tech and we're living in this VR world. And then you have never, ever jumped on board that would be really quite scary for you to go from non-tech to a completely VR existence. So it seems to me that Rahu is actually slowly pushing us forward little bit by bit that we can handle.
Yes, exactly. And the tech world, we can see that I don't know where it's going, but it's exciting. And we have to keep coming back to our precious bodies. So we can do as much tech as we want to, but in the end, it's customizing this ultimate piece of technology that, or of biology, or the beyond biology that we exist in as. Ultimately, we have our body, you have our mind, and body itself is a hologram, is holographic. And the way to unravel it all is to look at where the feeling has got restricted in the body, the emotion and the belief systems and things. And it's all customizable. Ultimately, we don't know what we can become yet.
I just feel like, because sometimes, again, I always feel like I am on some level doing this.
Of course you are.
I purposely, I mean, like I'm purposely cutting off, like pinching off the source.
Right.
And then to build it up, to build it up, to build it up, to build it up. It's like I'm working on whatever, and it's like I'm just resisting this or whatever, and it's like building it up, because I know that as soon as I let go, I step away from it for a while and I come back, it's all there, all ready made.
Yes, it's all already done. It's all already done, always already. Prior to space-time. I remember once going to the States many years ago now, and it's a completely different environment, and people were asking me questions and where I came from, and I go, well, before and beyond space-time. My source is before and beyond space. It was as natural as that, But you have to keep coming back I have to keep coming back anyway, to looking at the bits where I, for some reason, do not know, like you're talking about pinching yourself off in the body, to have some kind of place to explore. There has to be some area of expansion, and the places where we don't know, or we don't seem to know, or we don't seem to know with our neural pathways, or the places where we have deliberately cut ourselves off. This is where Rahu calls us. Come down this pothole, he says. And you will see what your mind has judged to be a dead end or a scary place is actually portal to magnificence. That's what he's saying in the poem. I mean, I keep going back to it now. I think, well, how did I write that? But I did. It wasn't some piece of what people call channeling. I was very conscious and aware of what I was writing. But there it is. And it was, well, I don't know, some things I can't even speak of yet.
And in terms of the Song of Rahu, do you feel like it is, because that is something you wrote some years ago, do you feel like it's come full circle, or it's come to its time to be put out there?
It's time for it to appear to be more widely known. Some of the points that we were talking about, like well, some of the really scary things in the world at the moment, and that mind shuts off, because we have to have some kind of boundaries, some kind of, otherwise I don't know, it's almost difficult to speak of it, like we were saying the other day about should I say that Osho said Hitler was a saint, for example, or anyone who takes on a shadow is actually serving the world. So every single expression of the world, even the most apparently obnoxious, impossible, or unthinkable things, are serving expression of consciousness. Like you're right, talking about Tantra, because some of the breaking of the rules or the boundaries of graveyards and Rahu calls himself the sacred sacrilege. What can you imagine what a sacred sacrilege is? For goodness sake, what is a sacred sacrilege? The unnameable. Bearing the unbearable to. We're being widened, we're being stretched beyond what the.
Do you think the Song of Rahu is ready to be heard, therefore, in a wider context?
It's ready for. I have guess in a way I have protected myself and the words for a long time, but it is time for it to be delivered. But my sense of not wanting to publish it in the written form, because you use a different part of the mind of the embodiment to listen and feel from reading with a different part of the brain, and why I was not so keen about having some of it written, because I change it slightly when I speak it, and the sense of doing it as a spoken vehicle rather than a written one, because it can be received more easily through the heart when I speak, because I am the sound that I'm speaking. I am that sound. And some of the things that I know that I am and that I could say, I'm not sitting in an ashram speaking these things when it might be more acceptable. I'm speaking to select groups of people at the moment. But actually, it's all the sacred sacrilege. Would you cut out of a horror movie, would you cut the horrible bits out to make it, to sanitize it,
right,
so that people can actually watch the whole movie? Or do we select the bits that mind judges are bearable? Because everybody that listening is already what they are. Their mind might not know it, but they already are. And yet, if you stretch something too quickly, it breaks. It has to be expanded gently, like giving birth. You stretch the opening to allow the womb to open and the baby to come forth. It has to gently, pulsating, stretching, not just breaking.
It seems there's been a lot of breaking in society recently, and I think maybe that's something we'll talk about with Rahu in the 11th. But
yes,
in terms of the breaking apart, the divisiveness that's been apparent,
yes,
is this kind of Rahu, like it's almost like it's evolved things too quickly. People are always like looking, projecting onto the other group of people who are.
The thing is, we always have to be. I go back to some of the words of some of the scriptures. We have to be ready. We have to be ripe, and it behoves us to prepare ourselves to have those little breakings, like when you're I don't know, exercising. You break little fibers of the muscles, and then they heal, and then they restore themselves, and it's just little breakings. But if you shatter completely, then the alchemical experiment is of dividing, separatio e conjunctio, dividing, separating, and then rejoining, and and constantly, a constant process of breaking, like the waves on the ocean. That's what we are like. The wave rises, it reaches a crescendo, it breaks, it shatters, the form is gone. But the new form is always coming behind it. It's just like the pulsations of birth. That's the pulsations of the ocean, the flow of the river, the flow of the ocean.
So is it true to say then that the quite like divisive, disparate period we're living in right now, the quite fragmented, as you say, period we're living in right now, is actually in a way giving birth, or will give birth to something else? It's like the waves coming crashing back together again.
Yes, but it's constant, and no form. The form will never disappear because we're the pulsations. So how do we make it simpler and easier for ourselves? By very simple practices of allowing the stretching, allowing this the simplicity of widening rather than the shattering. Fear and tightening is what actually causes us the pain, the anguish, shall we say, the suffering, not the pain. I mean, pain is just pain, but suffering. Because we feel our world is falling to pieces. The sooner that we can have a few more people can hear everything is actually okay. Find your way to root your mind in non-local intelligence, in the coherence, the inherent coherence of everything. It may look as if there's a chaos, but the chaos that we are experiencing is the chaos of transition. If you look at the chaos transition of a human baby being born, there is a period when nobody knows what's happening, the tide turn, if you like. It's all right. If there's one thing I could say, is relax, breathe, dance, move, nourish yourself in as many ways as you can find. Breathing, sounding, singing, dancing, color. Enjoy the beauty of this world. Go and look at nature. Relax and know that nature is never spent. As Hopkins says, there lives the dearest freshness deep down things. Always. It always returns. And we don't have to do so much bungee jumping, you know. We're always on that end of that thread, if you like, of the heart. I remember asking once many years ago, and I said, oh, what am I doing here? All this chaos. And it said, you're bungee jumping. The destiny to be buried alive at the center of the earth, but to rise again. And we're constantly, we are that phoenix energy rising, just like the form of the wave of the ocean breaks, cries, apparently it's gone, but it's not, because we are the frequency. We are that temporarily looking like a little particle, like a little object, but we are all of that, and we can shapeshift back into our that wave that we are, that arising all the time. But it's no good listening to anybody saying this. It's experiment. Experiment in the difficult times and experiment in the easy times, and find the way to relax and let go into the pulsation, the non-local intelligence that everyone already is. And it's no good me just saying it. I did think when, what was it? Got to be 40 years or more, I don't know, I've forgotten how long ago. And I thought, oh, I see the answer to everything. Oh, I have the solution to the whole world. I just go and tell them and I'll be redundant. I was a bit naive at that time, but yes, that's how I thought one day. I saw the oneness. I saw everything's made out of filaments of light that I called candy floss, because it looked just like that and felt just like that. The womb wall, I used to call it, the womb wall of existence around me. And I so naively thought, oh, I just got to tell everybody, and then everybody will know, and then no more fighting, no more. Oh.
Well, actually, you bring us into the next house of astrology when we will talk next time about Rahu in the 11th. In that, the 11th is all about groups of people coming together and societies, communities, and society at large, and how Rahu in the 11th can be really progressive.
Yes, that's going to be fun, isn't it?
Really fun, yeah, because it's very much tied into Aquarius anyway, in the age of Aquarius, in the sense of where are we actually all going with this? How do we combine with all of our individual experiences, come together and push things forward, and in a way that we can all handle as well. In a way, that's what the 11th house is all about as well, because the 11th house can also create a lot of issues when you're dealing with groups, right? Because everybody has their own ego, their own needs, their own desires, and then how do they all blend and mesh?
I remember once, oh gosh, so many years ago, and this by Inna said, ego? Ha! Ego doesn't even exist. The idea of ego, I mean, there is individualization of consciousness, but the idea that ego has to be eliminated, or everyone is an individualized expression, and the moment that the choice to stabilize the mind in the heart field, mind is illumined, and when mind is illumined by what it is, then everything somehow automatically becomes harmonious, becomes, everything has its place. Just like if you look at a hand and I want to put finger and thumb together, how does it do that? Am I the thumb? There's some living intelligence, which is everything, which makes it fit together. But you have to root in that to know that. And when there's disconnection, finger and thumb don't meet. And then the neural pathways aren't wired up right, and we get, I don't know, muscular dystrophy or something. It's just anyway, what I want to say about this particular thing we've been exploring, the 10th house, that becoming visible, becoming gloriously creative, becoming everything you desire, experiencing the desires of the four yogic flowers and fruits, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, experiencing that is your natural inheritance. That is everybody's natural state. And when each one of us makes the choice to, as far as we possibly can, root mind in the heart, that transmits, and the everyone that I am flows, first of all, in my life, in this particular ordinary life that I call mine, harmoniously. And everybody that you come into contact with gets a knock-on effect, gets a high, if you like, contact high. But each individual has to choose to be discipled to the heart, and automatically the raising up happens, because the wind beneath your wings is there, the heart. And everyone is automatically already what they are, no effort, carried with the wind beneath your wings. So that is the one thing I would say at the end of this. How do we achieve our magnificence, our full expression, our career, our whatever, all of it, is to find the way to keep taking every experience back to the non-local intelligence, to the coherence, to the heart field, and watch what happens. Make it your dedication to explore that, especially in the tight corners, because I tell you, the power that is released in the tightest corners is extraordinary. The union of big opposites, resurrection after crucifixion, for example, is just, anyway, that's my little bit.
And well, that's my little bit too. So thank you so much for Kishori. As always, it pains me to end these conversations, but I look forward to our next one when we talk about Rahu in the 11th house. And we're approaching the end now, coming to Rahu full circle back to the 12th house, back into the first house to begin again. And so we have discussed perhaps doing something next year, 2022, on Rahu, perhaps approach it in a different way. But I've really enjoyed this series, I have to say, with Rahu in all of the houses of astrology. Again, if you'd like to continue the conversation with Kishori, you can go to her website. It's magicmakeover.com. That's magic with a K, MAGICK hyphen makeover.com. My own website here is timelineastrology.com, and you can get me on patreon.com as well to get daily posts. I do a monthly forecast as well, and monthly video horoscopes, all of that on patreon.com/timeline astrology. So please think about joining and becoming a supporter of Timeline Astrology and my work. It will really help me out, and I can keep doing these podcasts and videos and who knows what else. I'm also releasing a magazine in 2022, as I have for the last few years, and that's available for patrons in December 2021, and will be available for the public in January 2022. So check it out, timelineastrology.com. That's all for now. Thank you so much for listening to this all the way through to the end. Hope you enjoyed it, and until next time.